Yet another episode where we shall be looking at the proposed memorandum of the mathematics paper 1 for grade 11s for one of the districts. Okay. So this question or this question paper had 10 questions in all. We had to answer all the questions, just like all the other instructions in the previous papers. Okay. So question number 1, which is the algebra part, they want us to solve for x. So what we do in this case, especially with the first one, 1.1.1, we do not need to open the brackets because it's already in the dot product format, and then there's a 0 this side. So just equate everything to 0. So it's either x is a 0 or the 3 minus x must give us a 0. Okay, we can move the x that side, which means x is a 3. So these two answers for precisely the 2 marks that we allocated. And then 1.1.2, we have correct to decimal places, which means we need to apply the quadratic formula, but that can only work after simplifying this and opening it up, okay? So on the left-hand side, I'll have my 2x squared minus 5x. On my right-hand side, I'll have a 10 minus 2x. Okay, let me move everything to one side of the cosines. So that's going to be 2x squared. When this one moves, it's going to be minus 3x. This one goes minus 10 is equal to 0. Then from there, we know that our a is a 2. Our b is a negative 3. Then our c is a negative 10. So if we can punch this into the quadratic formula, which is a b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay, substitute those numbers. I'm getting my x values to be 3,11. And then the other x value is negative 1,61. Okay, so that would have been my approach for question 1.1.2. Then 1.1.3, where we have the surd form. So step number 1, we need to isolate the surd or the root. We move the x that side so that it is the square root of negative 4x minus 7 is equal to x plus a 3. Let me put this side. So it's the root of negative 4x minus 7 is equal to x plus 3. Step number 2, we need to square both sides to get rid of the square root. So that's going to be negative 4x minus 7. That's going to be x squared plus 6x plus 9. Let's create a standard equation. So x squared, when the 4 goes that side, it's a 10x. When this comes this side, it's a 16 is equal to 0. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's open the 2 brackets. Let's vector out. So you can have x and x, you can have 8 and 2. So either my x is going to be negative 8 or the x is going to be negative 2. But that's not the last step, because remember, after getting these answers, we need to test the values. So originally we had square root of negative 4x minus 7. This was minus x should give us a 3. Let's start with a negative 8. So negative 4 times negative 8, that gives me a positive 32. When I subtract 7, I'll get a 25. Okay, we know that the square root of 25 is going to be a 5. Then I'm subtracting minus 8. So this is going to give me a 13, which is not a 3. So this is crossed out, or it's not a solution. Let me try with the negative 2. So we know that negative 4 times negative 2, that's going to be 8 minus 7 is a 1. Square root of 1 is a 1. Minus 2, that gives me a 3. Perfect. So this is the only solution for that question. Then 1.1.4, we have the inequality. So open up the brackets. That should be our first step. So that's going to be 6x minus 6 is greater or equal to 3x minus 3x squared. It's fine. Let's transpose all. Let's create a standard equation. This is going to be 3x squared plus 3x minus 6 is greater or equal to 0. We said 3x squared. Okay, plus 3x minus 6 is greater or equal to 0. Okay, divide through by 3, you have x squared plus x minus 2 is greater or equal to 0. We need to factorize this. That's going to be x plus 2, x minus 1 is greater or equal to 0. Then from this, I know that my critical values are going to be negative 2 and a 1. But since our a is greater than 0, okay, and the inequality that we're talking about is greater or equal to, which means x must be less or equal to negative 2, and then x must be greater or equal to 1. So that's how we're going to represent the solutions. Alternatively, you can use your parabola. This becomes a negative 2. This becomes a 1. We're looking for this area. Okay, so that is 1.1.4. Then 1.1.5, 25 to the x minus 5 to the x plus 1 is equal to 500. I think I need to use the k method in this case, but let me first break down everything to the simplest base. So I know that 25 is going to be the same as 5 to the 2x. I can split this up. That's going to be 5 multiplied by 5 to the x minus a 500 is equal to 0. Then I can let 5 to the x be a k. So in the first case, I'm going to have k squared minus 5k minus 500 is equal to 0. Okay, let me put it aside where I have space. So it's saying k squared minus 5k. That's true, no? And then minus 500 is equal to 0. Okay, so which two numbers are we looking at? Which two numbers are we looking at for us to create the factors? So I'm going to have, okay, so I can use 20 and 25. No? So 20 and then 25. So this is a minus, then that's a plus. Yeah, so it means x can be negative 20 or x can be, but then where are we getting x from? Remember we said it's a k. This is a k, okay. All right, then if we do the substitution, remember we said 5 to the x is a k, okay. So 5 to the x can never give us a negative 20. We can never have exponents that give us a negative answer. Okay, then 5 to the x is equal to 25, which means 5 to the x is the same as 5 squared. Drop the bases, which means x is a 2. In this case, we don't need to test. Then 1.2, where they want us to solve simultaneously. So remember, we have two equations, x minus 2y is equal to 3, and then 3xy plus 4y squared is equal to 1. So if I label this equation number 1 and equation number 2, start with the first equation and make x the subject in this case, okay? So that's going to be x minus 2y is 3. Say 3xy plus 4y squared is equal to 1. So I'm going to say x is going to be 2y plus 3. This is equation 3. That was equation 1, equation 2. Then I need to substitute equation 3 into equation 2. Where there is x, I replace by that. So that's going to be 3y into 2y plus 3 plus 4y squared is equal to 1. Opening this up, I have 6y squared plus 9y plus a 4y squared minus 1 is equal to 0. Collect the like terms, I have 10y squared plus a 9y minus 1 is a 0. You can use your quadratic formula, or alternatively, you can decide to... Okay, so if I'm to look at that, I know that I'll have a 1 either side. And then for me to get a 9 and 10, I can have a 10y and just a y. Well, that makes sense. That's 10y squared. Can make this a minus, because that's going to be a 10y minus a y. And okay, so if I do that, which means my y is going to be 1 over 10, or my y is going to be negative 1. Then I substitute this into my equation 3. So 2y plus 3. 2y plus 3 is our x. So if I substitute that, that's going to be 2 over 10. Okay, and then plus 3, which gives me 3 over 2, which is the same as 16 over 5. Okay, because we said it is 1 over 5 plus 3 is 16 over 5. Or if I substitute with a negative 1, that becomes negative 2 plus 3, which means my x is a 1, not y. X becomes a 1. So that is how the simultaneous equation would have been approached. Then 1.3, given m squared plus 14n squared is equal to 9mn, determine the ratio of m to n. All right, let's see. So let's create the standard equation. So m squared plus, no, let me use a minus. Let me take it as minus, okay, minus 9mn plus 14n squared is equal to 0. Then let's factor this out, okay, so that we can be in position to get our ratios the way they want them. So that's going to be m and m. Numbers I look at to get me 14 and 9 is just 7 and 2. So I'll say minus 7n minus 2n. Okay. Then if that is true, then I can just equate that and have m is equal to 7n. Then divide both sides by n, which means m over n is 7. Meaning that the ratio in this case, m to n, is just going to be 7 is to 1. Alternatively, if we look at this, m is equal to n, divide both sides by n, which means m is to n is the same as 2 is to 1. So we have 7 is to 1, and then 2 is to 1. Okay, so those are the ratios that they wanted in this case. And then question 2, without a calculator, they want us to simplify this. So from our sides, we know that square root of 125 is the same as 5 root 5. Okay, so that's going to be a 5 root 5 multiplied by another root 5, which is going to give us a 25. Minus, the bases are the same, so we can add up those exponents. So that is 5 to the 2x plus 1, but I'm dividing it by 5 to the 2x. Anything to the exponent of 0 is always a 1. Then I can subtract, in this case, since the bases are still the same. So it's going to be a 25 minus 5 to the x dies out. So I'll be left with a 20 as my answer. Then 2.1.2. Okay, in this case, just look for the smallest exponent, which is 23. And that's what we're going to focus on. So 3/20/25 over 3/20/23 into, I'll be left with just the 3 minus 1. Then I'm saying plus 1. When you do your magic there, you subtract the exponents. You're only going to be left with 3 squared over 3 minus 1 is a 2 plus 1. That's 9 over 2 plus 1, which means our final answer is just 11 over 2. Then 2.2. For which values of x is the expression non-real? So an expression can be non-real for as long as whatever is inside of the root sign is negative. So 5 minus 6x should be less than 0. Then now we can move the 5 that side. So negative 6x is less than negative 5. Divide both sides by negative 6, which means x must be greater than 5 over 6. And then 2.3. Determine the value of k for which the expression will have equal roots. So we know that for equal roots, the discriminant 4 squared minus 4ac must be equated to 0. So let's create a standard equation from this, move everything to the left-hand side. So x squared plus kx, we're saying plus k minus 1 is equal to 0. So from that, I can see that my a is a 1, my b is a k, and then my c is a k minus 1. And then I substitute into that. So the b, which is k squared minus 4, the a is a 1, and then the c is k minus 1, should be equated to 0. That's k squared minus 4k plus 4 is equal to 0. So for the roots to be equal, chances are high we're going to get the same value, which is k minus 2 and then k minus 2. Solving this, k becomes just a 2. All right, so that is question number 1 and 2 for algebra. Question 3, which is the number patterns, we have given the linear sequence 35, 28, and so on. We want the next two terms. So looking at the patterns, like we are subtracting 7. So 21 minus 7, I'll get a 14, and then I'll get a 7. So those will be my two terms. And then 3.1.2, they want us to get the Tn, the nth term, or the general rule. So since the common difference is negative 7, so that's going to be negative 7n. What is 35 minus minus 7? That is plus 42. So that becomes the rule. Then which term is going to have a value of negative 140? So where there is Tn, we put negative 140 is equal to negative 7n plus 42. Let's move the 42 that side. That's going to be negative 182 divided by negative 7. That will give us the n. So 182 divided by 7 gives me 26. So T26 will be negative 140. Then 3.2, consider the linear sequence again with unknowns. Determine the value of x. So what we know is that if this is our D1, this is our D2, these differences have to be equated to each other. So for me to get D1, where can I do this? Okay. We're going to subtract what is 3x minus 5x, that's negative 2x. What's negative 4 minus that? I'll get a negative 2. We said we are equating it to what's 2x minus 3x, that's a negative x, minus 3x minus 4, that's a plus 1. Then I'll move this x that side, I'll move the 2 that side. So which means negative x is equal to 3, divide both sides by negative 1, which means x is going to be negative 3. Then 2, they want us to get the 100th term. So for us to get the 100th term, we just need to substitute and get the general rule. So if x is negative 3, which means my first term is going to be negative 17, because that's negative 15 minus 2, negative 17. My second term is going to be negative 13, and so on and so forth. The difference there would be a positive form, which means that our Tn, first of all, is going to be 4n, but negative 17 minus 4 is going to give me negative 21. Then for me to get the T100, it's going to be 4 times 100 minus 21. And this should give me something like 379. All right, so that is 3.2.2. And then which term in the sequence will be the first to be positive? So for it to be positive, which means the general term must be greater than 0. Move the 21 that side. For n is greater than 21, divide both sides by 4. So which means n must be greater than 5,25. So when we round this off, which means we're looking at the 6th term. That is the term that's going to be the first one to be a positive. Question 4. We have a quadratic sequence. 6, 4, 2, 5, 80, 5, 2, 2, 4, 6, 8. They want us to get the general term. So we know that if we subtract that, T2 minus T1, I'm getting negative 62. Then I'm getting negative 58, negative 54. And then I'm having a positive 4, positive 4. So this should be equated to A, okay? So which means that my 2A is a 4. And then A is a 2. Then 3A plus a B is going to be negative 62. When I replace A with a 2, which means my B is going to be negative 68. Then we know that A plus B plus C must give us the 642. Replacing A with a 2 and then B with a negative 68, which means that C is going to be 78. Meaning that the Tn is going to be 2n squared minus 68n plus a 78. Then which term or terms of the sequence will have a value of 108? Okay, so we said it's 2n squared. Okay. We said minus 68 plus 70, 78 should be equated to 148. Move this that side. So it's 2n squared minus 68n. What's 148 and 178? It's giving us negative 17 is equal to 0. Does that make sense? Let's go back and see. This was a negative. Okay, so this negative 78 that we subtract from the 642. 642 minus 78. Remember, it's a negative. Okay. So we're saying negative 68 and the 2, that's going to be negative 642. So 642 plus 66. That's giving me 708. So the C is 708. Okay, so if C is 708, we're moving the 148 that side, which means it's going to give us some 560 in that case. Okay, so that's going to be 516. Then divide through by 2, which means it's n squared minus 34n minus 280 is equal to 0. Okay, this is a 34. So two numbers that I can work with, that's n with a 20, n with a 14. Can say minus, no? N is going to be a 20, or n is going to be a 14. So remember, this is a quadratic pattern, which is more of a parabola, okay? And if that's a parabola, if the y value can be the same at two different x values or n values, so 20 and 14 would be the correct approach. Okay, then the general term of the first differences of the quadratic pattern is given by this. The second term is this. They want us to get the first term. So we know that term 1, we have negative 18, then term 3, and so on. For us to get first differences, I need to substitute 1 there. So if n is a 1, this is going to be a negative 3. If n is a 2, the story continues. So if n is a 2, that's going to be a negative 9. So for me to answer the question, they want us to get the first term. I have to move backwards. So negative 18 plus 3, that's going to be negative 15. Then they want us to get T50 of the quadratic. So we need to get the difference here, which is negative 6. So 2a is negative 6, which means a is negative 3. 3a plus b is negative 3. That's going to be negative 9. Move it that side. B is a 6. A plus b plus c, we go to negative 15. So this and that is a 3. Move it that side. C becomes negative 18. Then my general term becomes negative 3n squared plus 6n minus 18. T50 is going to be negative 3. That's 50 squared. 6 times 50 minus 18. This becomes negative 7218. Question 5, which is the functions. Given this, we know that this is a hyperbola. Calculate the value of f into negative 1. So where there is x, replace it with a negative 1. So that's going to be negative 2 over negative 1 plus 3 plus 1. That's negative 2 over 2 plus 1, which is a 0. Okay, hence or otherwise, write down the coordinates of the x-intercept. So we know that for the x-intercept, the y must be 0. So the coordinates, they are going to be negative 1 and 0. Then asymptotes. So this is an asymptote. So x is a negative 3 and then y is a 1. Then for the y-intercept, we said x must be a 0. So negative 2 over 0 plus 3, that is that, plus 1, which gives me 1 over 3. And write it as a coordinate form, there's no problem. So 1 over 3, x is a 0. So 0 and 1 over 3. Then range of f, we know that range, y is an element of real numbers. Y should never be equal to the asymptote, which is a 1. Then they want us to sketch. So with this sketch, where can we put it? Okay, let's put it somewhere here. Okay. That is x, this is y. We say the asymptotes is negative 3. We have a y, which is a 1, it's an asymptote. Intercepts, we said we have 0 and 1 over 3, which can be seen here. Then we got 0 and negative 1, or negative 1 and 0, which is going to be somewhere there. So which means our graph is going to be moving in this sort of direction. And then the other one must be just in that sort of format. Then determine the equation axis of symmetry, which has a negative gradient. So we know that that will be given as negative x plus c. To get the c value, we're going to use this point of intersection in the asymptotes. X is negative 3, y is a 1. So 1 is equal to negative and a negative, which is a 3 plus c. Move the 3 that side, c becomes a negative 2, which is negative x minus 2. Then write down the domain of this function. What's happening is that this graph is being moved 3 units to the right. So if we move it 3 units to the right, which means this asymptote is now going to be on the y-axis. So we're going to say that x should be an element of real numbers. X should never be 0. Okay. This 2 does not affect the domain. Okay? Then for which values of x will f of x be less or equal to 1? Where is the graph below? For which values of x is the graph below this line of 1? Okay. So for it to be below the 1, we're seeing that from this negative 3 moving to the right, the graph is below 1. Okay. So I'm going to say x must be greater than negative 3. Then 2, where do we find x over f of x to be greater or equal to 0? So which means that if this is a positive and a positive, if that's a negative and a negative, that's when we can have a positive that is greater than 0. Okay, so on the positive axis, okay, from this point moving this side, where do I find f of x to be above the x-axis? So we're seeing that from the 0 mark, moving to the infinity. So x must be greater or equal to 0. And then where on the negative side, where do I find the graph to be below? So from this point up to this point. So you can see -1 is less x, and then less -3. So the -1 will have the equal sign, but then the 3 won't because it's an asymptote. Okay, then question number 6, which is the exponential. They want us to write down the equation of the asymptote. Y is a -4. So this represents the asymptote. X and y intercepts. So let's start with the y intercept where x is a 0. So anything to the exponent of 0 will always be a 1. So 1 minus 4, which is -3. So it's 0 and -3. Then for the y-intercept, no, that's the y-intercept. And for the x-intercept, we said y should be a 0. So we're going to move the 4 that side. So we shall have a 4 is equal to 2 to the -x. Now that 4 is the same as 2 squared. Drop the bases, which means x is -2. So -2 and 0. Then draw a sketch. What's x and y? Asymptote, we say it's a -4 down here. The intercept is -3. And this one is -2. So it means our graph should be moving in that sort of format. Then determine the average gradient between this and that. So we're going to use the normal gradient formula for this case, but then we need to find the y values first. So what is the y when x is -1? That's going to be 2 minus 4, which is -2. Then when x is a 0, we say it is a -2. Is that true? No. If x is a 0, the y is a -3. Okay, then we can just use the gradient formula. Remember, we said changing y over changing x. So -3 minus minus, which is a +2, over 0 minus minus, which is a +1. So this becomes a -1. So the gradient is -1. And then they want us to solve for x if h of x is greater or equal to 4. Okay. So for which value of x is the graph above? Above 4. For which values of x? So we need to find this value here. And then to the left. Okay, I can substitute that since I have no conditions. Okay. So I can move the 4 that side, which becomes 8. So 2 to the -x is greater or equal to 8. 2 to the -x is greater or equal to 2 to the 3, which means our x must be... Okay, so I have -x is greater or equal to 3. Then when I divide both sides by negative, which means it's going to be less or equal to -3. So this becomes the solution. Question number 7, we have the parabola and the straight line. Then we have a hyperbola. The turning point is given and all of that information. I want us to get the coordinates of A and B. So what we can see is that for us to get A, there is a straight line that is passing here. Let's use that. Where there is y, let's put a 0. Okay. So 0 is -2x plus 4. 2x is a 4, which means x is going to be a 2. So if that is a 2, this is a 1. Remember the distance here should be the same distance. So I'm going to say A is 2 and 0. But then B is going to be, if this is a 3, then 3 plus 1, that's -4 and 0. Then hence, or otherwise, can we prove that the graph of f can be written as that? So what we can do here, let's use the turning point approach. X plus p squared plus q. Then that's going to be a into x. Since this is a negative one, this is going to be a plus 1 squared, and then plus 18. What we need to just get is the value of a. And that can be obtained using any point on the graph of f. Okay, let me use 2 and 0. Where there is y, I'll put a 0. Where there is x, I'll put a 2. So that's going to be negative 18 is equal to 2 plus 1 is a 3. 3 squared is 9a. Divide both sides by 9, a becomes negative 2, which means y is negative 2 into x plus 1 squared plus 18. All right, then 7.3, they want us to get the coordinates of C. So with coordinates of C, we can see that that's where the two graphs are meeting. So equate the equations, okay? I can have negative 2 into x plus 1 squared plus 18 minus, remember it was a minus 2x, so it means it's going to be plus 2x minus 4 should be equal to 0. So I'm saying f of x equated to g of x, and then we simplify. Okay, opening this up, that's going to be x squared plus 2x plus 2. That's going to be plus 2x plus 14 should be 0. Negative 2x minus 4x minus 4 plus 2x plus 14 is 0. Okay, divide through by negative as we collect the like term. But why not divide? Oh, it's fine. Let me just simplify first. This and this is a negative 2x. This and that. I'm having a 10. So that's going to be x squared minus, and it's going to be a plus, then minus 5. Does that make sense? No. Let's go back nicely. Okay, so we said 18 and 4, that's a 14, which is okay, we agree. Opening this up, minus 4 minus that, which is still fine. Then when we simplify this, okay, we're going to end up with negative 2x squared. This and that is minus 2x plus 10 is 0, which is x squared plus x minus 5 is a 0. Something's not making sense with me here. What am I doing wrong? You see what I'm doing wrong? The way I opened my bracket is extremely wrong. Okay, so this is going to be just a 1, because 1 squared is a 1, which means that's a 2. Okay, so minus 2x squared, this and that is minus 2x, this and that is going to be positive 12. Okay, so it's x squared plus x minus 6. Okay, factor that out, it's going to be x plus 3, x minus 2 is a 0, which means x is a negative 3, or x is a 2. How many marks is this question? Just 3 marks. Okay, so the 2 is already sorted out. Then we need to get the y value there, which y value will be obtained by just substituting this into the 2x plus 4. So if I do that, which means my y is going to be a 10. All right, then next, we want us to get the values of p and k. So since this is an asymptote as well, is the axis of symmetry, we know that p is going to be equivalent to that. So I'll say that p is a 1, positive. And then substitute this one using the coordinates of C for me to get my k. Okay. So if I use a 10, This is going to be negative 3 plus 1. That's going to be negative 2. Cross multiply, which means k is negative 20. Okay, then use the graphs to determine the values of x for which g of x. And that's, so where do we find g of x? To be less or equal to f of x. So g is below f. G is below f. So you can see that g, how many graphs are here? We have a whole lot of graphs, f, g, and h. Okay, so g is the straight line. Where is the straight line? Below. So it's between these points. So you're going to say 3, which is a negative. So negative 3 is less or equal to x, and then less or equal to positive 2. So between that interval, the g of x is below. All right, then 8.1, they're telling us to determine the annual effective interest rate. So what we do is say 1 plus I effective is equal to 1 plus the I nominal over n per exponent n. Then substitute, means I effective is going to be 1 plus 13.9% quarterly to the exponent of 4 minus 1. Since we're looking for I, we have to multiply by 100. So I have 14.64% when I punch that. Then 8.2, an asset has depreciated in value by a quarter of the original value. So which means my A is going to be a quarter P. If initially was P that was invested. So a quarter P is equal to P into 1 minus I to the exponent of 9. The P's will cancel. 1 over 4 is equal to 1 minus I to the 9. I need to find the 9th root on either sides. Then I'll be having 1 minus I is equal to the 9th root. Okay. We know that the 9th root of 0.25 is 0.8572. Move the 1 that side. Okay, you subtract the 1. And then you multiply, or you divide both sides by -1, then multiply by 100. So I'm getting 14.28%. All right, then 8.3, 25,000 is deposited into an account which offers an interest rate of this compounded monthly, and then after 3 years, this amount is withdrawn from the account. How much will be in the account after 10 years? So this is more of a timeline, but I'm just going to squeeze it in one step now. So we know that the 25,000 must grow for the first 3 years. That's 9% over 12. That is 12 times 3. The answer we get, let's subtract 6850. Whatever will be left will now grow for the remaining period of 12 times 7. Okay, when I punch this into the calculator straight away, I'm getting 48,452.49. All right. Question number 9, which is the probability, are telling us that if probability of A is this, probability of B is that, A or B is this, can we get the value of Y if A and B are mutually exclusive? We know that A or B, okay, with the probability of A plus the probability of B minus the probability of A and B. So if events are mutually exclusive, which means the intersection is a 0. So 0.74 is equal to 0.45 plus a Y. Transpose that to 0.74 minus 0.45 gives me 0.9. Then 9.1.2 if the events are independent. So if events are independent, we just have to multiply. So 0.45 plus a Y minus 0.45Y. Subtracting that, we have a 0.29. y minus that is 0.55y. And then you divide both sides by 0.55. The y value I'm getting is 0.53. The 9.2 probability that it will be sunny tomorrow is 2/9. What do they need? They want a tree diagram. Okay, so this is sunny. I'll say N for not sunny. Then somebody can play rugby if it's sunny, and then we can say no rugby. If it's not sunny, someone can still play rugby or no rugby. So they're telling us that if it's sunny, it is 2/9, which means this must be 7/9 for the branch to give us a 1. Then if it is sunny, probability of playing rugby is 8/15. This must be 7/15. And then if it's not sunny, probability of playing rugby is 4/15. And then this must be 11/15. So the outcomes are, we know, sunny and rugby, sunny, no rugby, not sunny and rugby, not sunny and no rugby, okay? 9.2.2, they want us to find the probability that this person does not play rugby. So you cannot play rugby when it is sunny, okay? But then you can also not play rugby when it's not sunny. So I'll get 2/9 times 7/15 plus 7/9 times 11/15. When I simplify this, I'll get 91/135 as my result. All right, lastly, question number 10. Learners at a hostel may choose a meal and a drink for lunch. Their selections yesterday were recorded in a partially completed table. Probability of choosing a sandwich and fruit juice is 0.48. Calculate the number of learners that choose fruit juice and sandwich. Okay, if the probability is that, so it will be 0.48 multiplied by 500. This will give me, this gives me 240. Okay, so if that is a 240, we need to find what is here, which is a 160. And then if this is 400, this is going to be 100 to make it 500, which means that's a 40. This is going to be 200, which means this is a 300. Okay, the rows and the columns must tally up. Then is the choice of a fruit juice. Okay, probability of a fruit juice and a sandwich. Are they independent? So that's going to be probability of the fruit juice times the probability of the sandwich. So sandwich and fruit juice, we said it's 0.48. Let's see the side. Probability of just the fruit juice, we shall have 400 over 500. And then probability of a sandwich, that's the sandwich, not the fruit juice. That is the sandwich. Okay, let me start with the fruit juice is 300. And then the sandwich will be the 400 over 500, okay? So on the right-hand side, I'll have 12 over 25, which is a 0.48. Okay, so we know that the left-hand side is equal to the right-hand side. So in this case, we're saying that events are independent. All right, so that is what we would have done with the paper. And that's how it would have gone for people that wrote this paper. And just wish you all the best. Let's meet during the prediction of the paper too.